We begin the third parak of Maseches Kesubos today at the top of Daf Chof Tes, parak Elu Naras. Before we begin the actual text, let us glance at the side where we have our noseh, our topic heading, which reads Noshim Psulos, women that are unqualified to marry into, or we'll say disqualified from marrying into the Jewish people. There is a problem with their lineage. Sheyesh lohen knas, and nevertheless, if as na'aros are women between the ages of 12 and 12 and a half, if they are raped, so in addition to the standard tort payments that are required, there's also a fine that the Torah imposes for someone who rapes a virgin na'ara, and it's called a knas, and the knas is 50 pieces of silver, 50 shekel kesef. Mehem chiyuvei lav, mehem chiyuvei kores. Amongst them, you have women that, if one were to have intimacy with them, they would be guilty of a negative command, a lav, and some of them would result in the kores punishment. And the point here is, even though these are women that the rapist would not be allowed to marry, if he rapes them, he'll have to pay the knas. Now the Mishnah. Elu naros sheyesh lehem knas. Habo al, one who has intimacy with, and when it says intimacy, we're talking about an act of raping. One who has relations with a mamzeres, that's a girl that's, we call a mamzeres or illegitimate. Val hanesina, this is a girl from the Nesinim, a group of people that joined up with the Jewish people under questionable circumstances, so that their conversion is not something that we treat in regular conversion terms. Viala kusis, the kusim are people that also joined up with the Jewish people, and their conversion was also under questionable circumstances, and as a result of their questionable conversion, they are under the prohibition of the Torah of lo sischatin bam. One is not to marry them. So this is another forbidden type woman. Habo al hagiyores ve'al shvuya ve'al shivcha. A girl who niskairu is converted. Nishtachru, that is a niftu, is a bondmaid that was redeemed. That's number 5. That was the case of niftu is relative to the case of shivcha, and shinizgairu, that's relevant to the case of giores, and the nishtachru is relevant to the case of a shivcha. So that the numbering you see here, and if we just go over, we have to just correct a lack of precision. The niftu is a captive woman that was redeemed that corresponds to number 5. Niskairu is the converted woman that corresponds to number 4, and Nishtachru is the freed bondmaid. And all of these took place Pchusos mibo benos shalosh shonim v'yomechad. They were all under 3 years of age. Now, what is significant about that is that even though these women are assumed to have had intimacy, let's say the Giores, she was converted to Judaism, but under 3 years of age, even if she had intimacy before that, the Besulim, the virginity, which is a necessary element before we can impose a Knas fine, it grew back. Anatomically, it grows back, or say physiologically, it grew back. Likewise, in the case of the girl that was taken captive, or the bondmaid that had been a slave, but all this was before the age of 3. They were released from those situations, becoming full-fledged Jewesses after that situation. But all of that was within our first 3 years of life. And as we said, the Basulim, the virginity, grows back. And as a result, there will be a knas payment if any of these girls who happen to have had that in their background are raped. We continue in the Mishnah. Maybe we should point out that in the Mishnah, the first list of the Mishnah, the Mamzeres, Nesina, because all of these represent women that are forbidden as a negative command, in a lav. Habo'al achoso v'alachoso v'achosimo, one who has intimacy, who rapes his own sister, his father's sister, his mother's sister, v'alachos ishto, his wife's sister, v'al eshes ochiv, his brother's wife, v'al eshes achi oviv, or his brother's father's wife, v'al hanida, or a menstruant woman, yesh lahem knas, afal pi shein bikores, even though they carry with them a kores penalty. Nevertheless, the fact that the intimacy with them is a severe offense, carrying with it that severe punishment of kores, nevertheless, they will generate a knas payment. Why? Ein bohem misas based in, because there is no court execution associated, or court, let's say, a capital punishment, court execution associated with these kind of forbidden relations. From the Mishnah, then, you would see that that kores does not stand in lieu of a payment, but court execution would. On this topic, we will see different Tanaic opinions later in the sugya. A detail that I want to point out before we go into the Gemara, in this Mishnah we emphasize that the knas payment is paid only for a rape that takes place on a basula, a virgin woman. Hence, a woman that had been married and had consummated her marriage with her husband would not generate that particular type of payment, the knas, that 50 shekel payment. The other tort-related payments, damages, embarrassment, payment for medical expenses, those are imposed anyway. But this particular added payment of knas would not be. Now, with that having been said, how do you explain the case of number in our Mishnah? We had something listed as hey, yes, A is Eshes Ochiv, the wife of one's brother, or the wife of one's father's brother. Those are women that are married. So how can they be married and also still be virgins when the virginity is broken in upon the consummation of marriage? So the answer to that is that one's brother, or one's father's brother, they started the marriage process, the first stage we call kiddushin, but never reached the chuppah, the canopy, marriage canopy stage, which is followed by intimacy, which we call nisuin. So those are women that they still carry with them the name of achos or eshes ochiv. Even if the brother divorces her, she remains usher to you, to the brother. And one's father's brother's wife, likewise, he divorced her before they consummated their marriages, and hence they're still basulim, and hence the knas payment is still relevant. The Mishnah opened up with an interesting phrase that these are the naros that generate the knas payment, and then the Mishnah went on to list off women that are essentially forbidden to you. Now, if you keep the Mishnah on a literal level, you're saying these pasul women, these disqualified women will generate knas. What about a man that rapes a a simple, kosher, pure pedigree lineage girl between the age of 12 and 12 and a half, is there not going to be any knas payment? If anything, all the more so. Here, our Mishnah accounts for a knas payment where the raping was done of a woman that you couldn't marry anyway. And we should point out, very importantly, is that the Torah says that when a man rapes a woman, velo tiel isha, velo is spelled lamed vov, and unto him she shall be as a wife. So part of the this terrible act, reprehensible act of rapage, is also the expectation that the man, of course, if she approves, of her being married to him. These women are women that you can't marry in the first place. So how is it that the Mishnah is saying these disqualified women are they are capable of generating knas, and regular kosher women are not? That's perplexing. So now we read the Gemara. Hani naros psulos islu knas sheros lo. The disqualified women in the Mishnah, they will generate knas, and kosher women no. And that was all implied by the word elu. The Mishnah said these are the women, which implies to the exclusion of others. The Gemara answers, Hochi ka'omar, thusly we are to understand. Elu naros psulos sheyesh lohem knas. These are the disqualified women that even though they're disqualified from marrying into the Jewish people, sheyesh lohem knas, they nevertheless will generate knas. So you can see that what we have done is we added the word to a word of understanding, not necessarily to the text of the Mishnah, but to the understanding of the Mishnah, that these are the disqualified women that will generate knas, and they are habo ala mamzeres val nesina val kusis, these kind of women. But the Mishnah is not discounting or excluding kosher women from also generating a knas payment if they happen to be raped. Before we continue, we glance at the side under the nosei topic heading, Mishnosenu shesoferes darak naro chayeves b'knas hainu shitas Rebbe Meir. Our Mishnah indicated that the knas payment is made for the raping of a girl between age 12 and 12 and a half. If one were to rape a minor, that means under age 12, it sounds then that there would be no knas payment. That idea is the idea or the shita, the opinion of Rebbe Meir. And we'll see that there is an alternative approach or a different Tanaic approach, that of the Chachomim, which holds that the knas payment is not limited to that half year of age, but from age 3 till 12 and a half, there is a knas payment. And the reason we mention 3 is because under 3, if one were to engage in an act of intimacy, it's not viewed halachically speaking as intimacy. There is a minimum legal age for that act to be classified as a halachic act of intimacy. The Gemara says na'ara in means yes, that a na'ara will generate the knas payment, ketana lo, but a minor no, under age 12. Man tana, who holds that there is no knas for a ketana? HaRav Yehuda HaRav Rebbe Meir he. It's the Tana Rebbe Meir Desanya, and note we have a Tanaic source that takes us to the top line of Omid Beis. In this source, we'll see the opinion of Rebbe Meir, and also 3 lines from the bottom of this Omid, the Chachomim appear. Tana mibas yoim echad v'ad shetovi shtei saros a girl from the day she's born till she becomes an adult. That's age 12, where she produces where she's expected to produce the 2 pubic hairs. Yesh lo mecher v'ein lo knas. That means she can be sold by her father as a Jewish servant. We call a shifcha ivriya. The father has the legal right to sell her up during that time period. She goes free, by the way, when she reaches this age of 12, where she brings forth the 2 pubic hairs. But she will not generate knas. That means if someone rapes her during that time period, up till age 12, no knas payment. From age 12 till 12 and a half, tiboger reflects that age, 12 and a half. Yesh lo knas v'ein lo mecher. If she is raped, there is a knas payment, but there is the father has no right to sell her. Divrei Rebbe Meir. Shehoya Rebbe Meir. Omer Rebbe Meir gives us the following rule: Kol mokim sheyesh mecher ein knas. Whenever there is a possibility, a potential of sale, that's a reference to a ketana. The father has a right to sell her, so there's no knas payment. V'chol mokim sheyesh knas ein mecher. And wherever there is a knas payment from age 12 to 12 and a half, no ein mecher means the father no longer can sell his daughter. V'chachomim omrim Ketana miba sholosh shanim v'yom echad v'yad shetiboger. Let's skip the last line, which we have in brackets. Af knas b'mokom mecher. That's at the top of Omid Beis. We read Af knas b'mokom mecher. According to the Chachamim, a girl from age 3 years and a day, which is the minimum age that intimacy has the halachic status as such, until Bagrus is that age, Tiboger, 12 and a half. So we are describing a situation that there is even knas where a father could have sold his daughter. Just for the sake of accuracy, when it says b'mokom mecher, we're not saying that during this entire period the father can sell his daughter, because the father's right to sell her stops when she's maybe shtei cyrus, when she brings forth the 2 pubic hairs, which we assume is as age 12. So during this time period from 3 till 12 and a half, over most of the time period, you have the knas possibility alongside the father's right to sell her. But it's not a total overlap. As we said, the mecher right of the father stops a little earlier than the knas payment. Now, we skipped a bracketed section in which the language is not accurate, and that's why the Gemara had to fix it, which we read. But now let's read the bracketed section. The Chachamim are telling us that from 3 years of age till Bagrus, now we read the brackets at the bottom, Yesh lo knas. Knas payment is generated. The Gemara asks, Knas in mecher lo? During all of those years, from 3 till 12 and a half, is there no possibility of the father selling his daughter into servitude? There are psukim in the Torah that indicates that he can do that. So, what do you mean when you say yesh lo knas? So the Gemara answers at the top line, Yaf knas b'mokom mecher. Of course there's sale rights that the father has. But in addition to the sale rights the father has, there is also a knas payment that could be generated between the ages of 3 and 12 and a half. During that time, as we said, between the ages of 3 and 12, the father can also sell her. The Gemara asks, that's a question that we alluded to in our introduction. Before we read the Gemara itself, we glance at the side. where we have a nosei mivneh heading. Shortly, on the third line, you're going to notice a lettering scheme that starts, and later on the page, following the aleph here at the top, the beis letter will appear. They represent Shnei Shlavim B'Gemara B'Hatzogas Psukim Kemoker L'Knas L'Psulos. We will have two stages of verse presentation that will serve as the basis for the idea of knas, paid for the raping of women that themselves are psulos, are disqualified from marrying into the ranks of the Jewish people, like the mamzeros, the kusios, and the nesinos. Diamonds will appear, highlighting the names Reish Lakish v'Rav Papa. They will bring sources indicating there's knas even for women that are psulos. And why is this such an issue? That is, it becomes an issue because the Torah in the parsha of rape mentions that the victim is expected, or we should say the rapist is expected to marry the victim, of course, if she agrees. But he has no choice in the matter. He has to marry her if she agrees. But how could that be if you're dealing with a woman that is psula? So, now, assuming that he really cannot marry her, so that we can't fulfill that aspect of the Torah with regard to rape. And nevertheless, the payment aspect is required. So how does that operate? How do you base yourself? What source is there for that? So now the Gemara. V'hani b'nei knosa ninu. The women that are psulos, that are disqualified, are they capable of generating a knas requirement? The 50 shekel kesef payment? Ve'amai, why should that be? Ikri kan, refer to this, the pasuk that says v'lo tieh li'isha, that the victim of the rape shall be unto the rapist as a wife. Isha haru'uya lo. And we would assume that the pasuk is saying that it's a woman that is fit to marry him, not someone who's disqualified by her lineage status. So how is it then that if on the one hand the parsha of rape speaks about the payment is made, and we'll assume the payment is made to the woman that you are, to the father of the girl that you have raped, and it's that girl that you're going to then marry. What happens then when you can't marry her because she's a psula? Wouldn't it stand to reason that you don't have to make the payment either? The Gemara answers, Omar Reish Lakish. The reason for this is that there are, we'll say, extra words, there are psukim that we can darshan, that tell us or come to include even women that he will not be marrying. So Reish Lakish says, Naro ha na'ara. Without getting into the details, but there are three words / letters that are available for drasha. One of the psukim has the word ha na'ara in it, and the feeling is that the entire word na'ara plus the hey at the beginning is available for making a drasha. So for our purposes, there are three words that are available for teaching us additional information. Chad legufei. One na'ara word is for the halacha itself, that a kosher type girl that was raped, so payment must be made. V'chad la'asuyei chayvei lavin. An extra word, one of the extra words is to include women that you cannot marry. Intimacy with them would be an isur lav, a prohibition because of or a violation of a negative command. Generally speaking, when we see the term chayvei lavin, that means it's a type of offense that's punishable by lashing, not by court execution, nor by heaven's imposition of kores. V'chad la'asuyei chayvei krisus. And the third word teaches me that there will be a knas payment, even if the woman that was raped is a woman that would carry that the intimacy is punishable by kores. The intimacy with her is punishable by kores, and that is certainly the case if a brother rapes his sister. Rav Papa Omar, Rav Papa gives us a series of words that are available for drosha purposes. We should note that the first series of words comes from the parsha of ones, of rape. There's another parsha in the Torah called seduction. That's mifate. And in that parsha, you have the phenomenon of extra words. Besula, besulos, habasulos. Again, you have essentially two words, plus the hey is also darshaned in the word habasulos. So the hey is a letter that appears in the Torah in addition to the basic word basulos, hence it's presented here as habasulos. Chad legufei, v'chad la'asuyei chayvei lavin, v'chad la'asuyei chayvei krisus. The same list that we saw under Reish Lakish. Rav Papa says that one word tells me about the payment made for having the intimacy with a kosher girl, and the two extra words tell me about the payment made for chayvei lavin and the payment made for chayvei krisus. So that if you're asking from where do I know that chayvei lavin and chayvei krisus are also included in the Torah's levying of fines for these reprehensible acts of intimacy, here you have it. You have Reish Lakish's suggested words and Rav Papa's suggested words. For Rav Papa, my time aloma Reish Lakish. Why doesn't Rav Papa cite Reish Lakish's source, namely the Hana'ara words? Answer: Hahu miboyale lechad Abaye. He needs it for Abaye's teaching. So those words are used up for a separate set of teachings. Diomar Abaye, and you can see a house marking which is explained on the side, along with the squiggle underline. On the side of the Gemara, you can see the squiggle line is havlata. Lama kol echad eino omer kasheni. In this section of Gemara, each one, Rav Papa and Reish Lakish, will be asked why doesn't each one say like the other. And the house marking havlata shel limudim yuchadim l'shem hemshech haGemara. This is the highlighting of the special teachings for the benefit of the continuation of the Gemara. You'll see how we'll be using these house markings for that purpose. So in the meantime, the question is, Rav Papa, why doesn't he use Hana'ara? So we answer because he needs it for Abaye's teaching. The Amar Abaye, Bo olel mesa. If a man had raped the girl and she died before the court rendered its decision that he has to pay. So Potter, since she died before the Hamoda Bedin, before the court appearance, the rapist is exempt. He doesn't have to pay the father in that case. Shenemar v'nosan lavi hana'ara. The pasuk says, and he shall pay the father of the girl, not the father of the corpse. So the word hana'ara implies she's still alive. Lavi na'ara v'loi lavi mesa. And therefore, Abaye uses up the word hana'ara to teach this particular point. So, by using up the word hana'ara, you're using up the entire word and the hey as well, apparently, so that you're not left with any extra words. That is at this point in the Gemara. This will change as we go on later, though. For Reish Lakish, my time aloma Rav Papa. Why does Reish Lakish insist on darshaning the words na'ara and not like Rav Papa? Answer: Hahu miboyale ligzero shava. The word besula that you find in the parsha of Mefate is needed for a for a word comparison, cross-reference between the topic of seduction and the topic of rape. These are two types of reprehensible acts of intimacy. They're absolutely forbidden acts of intimacy. And the type of payment that is made in both of them is the same. It's 50 shekel kesef. However, the information that we just said, 50 shekel kesef, is not spelled out in one place. However, by combining the information that you have written in the Torah by mefate, by seduction, and the information that you find in the Torah written by rape, by ones, if you combine those 2 points of information, you'll come out with what we said, 50 shekel kesef. That's 50 pieces of silver shkolim. In order to make that cross-reference, to compare, or to cross-reference those two topics and combine the partial information from each one into one final type payment, you need a gezerah shava, word comparison, connecting the two sections together. And that's done through the word habasulos that appears in both parshios, in both sections. So that's the gezerah shava, the sanya, and here it's spelled out in a rather brief brisa. Kesef yishkol kemor habasulos. That's a pasuk in the case of the mefate, of the rape, of the seduction, that is. And we learn from this, shehei zeh kemor habasulos. That means that the fine that's paid in the case of seduction is compared to kemor habasulos, like the payment that's made, spelled out in the topic of onus, of rape. Umor habasulos, and the payment that's made in the case of rape, kozeh, shall be like the payment made in the case of mefate, of seduction. So, in the case of seduction, the type of coinage, shkolim, shekel, shkolim in the plural, that's spelled out by mefate. The pasuk says kesef yishkol. Yishkol for shekel, it's a type of coin. And the amount, the 50 units in silver, that is pointed out, 50 kesef, that is pointed out in the case of ones. So 50 kesef, combine it with shkolim, you come out with 50 shkolim kesef, 50 silver shekel coins. That is what's paid. In order to conclude that, we had to compare the two topics of mefate and ones. In both of those topics, the word basulos appears. So, as far as Reish Lakish is concerned, the word basula is taken up already. The Gemara asks, "Reish Lakish nami miboyale lichabaye." Reish Lakish, who used the word nara for including the psulos, does he not need the word nara for Abaye's teaching to exclude the case of the girl dying before the court appearance? For Rav Papa nami miboyale ligzera shava, does Rav Papa not need the word basula for the gezerah shava, and hence it's not available for the payment for an illicit act of intimacy with a psula? So this is a question that's asked almost rhetorically, meaning of course they need it for those purposes, but that then raises the question of, if the words are used up for these other teachings, for Abaye's teaching and for the Gezerah Shava, so what words then are available for teaching me about the psulos? Ella Shisa Kroi Ksivi. And hence we come to the second stage of verse sources for the information above, for all the information above. There are 6 psukim available for making these drushes. And they are as follows. Nara, Nara, Hanara, Besula, Besulos, Habasulos. 6 available drusha sources. Trei legufayu. 2 are needed for the halacha itself. Gufay means for themselves. Namely, there's a knas payment for kosher, acceptable, qualified Jewish girls, whether they are raped or they are seduced. V'chad l'chid Abaye. 1 extra word is for Abaye's point. The Hanara and not Avimesa. V'chad l'gzera shava. And 1 word keys us into the making of a comparison between the 2 topics. That we've now used up 4 of the words. Aisru le trei. There are now 2 extra words. Chad lasui chayve lavin, v'chad lasui chayve krisus. And as you can see, we've underline that because that's the main point. That's what we are looking for. Sources to include these types of forbidden women. Woman who's forbidden. Forbidden means, when we say forbidden, means in addition to the forbidden act of seducing or raping a woman, there's also the additional facet of these women that carry with them additional prohibitions. Either they're prohibited to marry to the tune of a lav or to the tune of kores. And now we approach now a new point. This is the beginning of a rather long discussion. This will take us till Daf Lamed Omen Aleph, till the next Omen of Gemara. The triangle is explained on the side under the Nosei Mivneh heading. Mishnoseinu, our Mishnah that says Diyesh Knas al Noshim Psulos, that a Knas payment is paid even in the case of raping a woman who is called Psula, Chayve Lavin and Chayve Krisus, Bo lafuke deois acheros batanoyim shepoitrim b'mikrim misuyomim. Our Mishnah is coming to exclude other Tanaic opinions. First, before we go on with any more structural discussion, let us go to the Gemara text and take a look at the superstructure of this Gemara. And this introduction is very, very important. There's a triangle here, and we say, Ulafuke mehai tana desanya. That means our Mishnah that says that there will be knas for raping a mamzeres, or raping one's sister. One represents a lav, the other represents kores. Is to the exclusion of these Tanoim that appear in the upcoming frame section where you see Shimon Atimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya. They will tell you that there is not necessarily going to be a knas payment if you're dealing with Noshim Psulos. On Daf Lamed Omen Aleph, you can see we have a triangle at the beginning of the line, approximately 10 lines from the top without having counted them. But you can see it says, Ulafuke midarebi Nechunya ben Akona. There's another Tana, his name is Rabbi Nechunya ben Akona. And his opinion is that offenses that are punishable by kores are not punishable by financial means. So that payments will not be made in the case of someone doing an act that is punishable by kores. So very simply put, if a man rapes his sister, according to Rabbi Nechunya ben Akona, no knas. According to our Mishnah, it said explicitly, a person rapes his sister, there is knas. So our Mishnah comes to we'll say, to exclude that opinion. Now, that having been said, we've just seen the superstructure of the Gemara. After we read a couple lines after triangle number 1, you're going to encounter a long bracketed section. Within this long bracketed section, the Gemara will be trying to analyze the difference between the two opinions within the first Tanaic source. What is going to be the difference between Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya? Now we continue with our Gemara text. First we do the triangle, number 1. Ulafuke mehai tana. Our Mishnah that says there's knas for mamzeres and achoso is to the exclusion of the following Tana. Desanya veloiti elisha. This is the same pasuk that we saw quoted above, and we mentioned that in the case of rape, the rapist is commanded to marry the victim, the girl he raped. Shimon HaTimni Omer Isha Shiesh Bo Havaya. A woman. The word Havaya comes from the word in the Torah. You see V'hoya or V'hoisa, Tihiyeh. The word in English, it's the verb form known as to be. So Shimon HaTimni says that the parsha of rape, including the issue of knas, applies to women that there is tfisas kiddushin, where when you marry them, she becomes an eshes ish. That would not be in the case of someone who tries to marry his sister. If a person gives money to his sister in exchange for her marriage to him, it doesn't get off the ground. That's a kiddushin that has no havaya. It doesn't take hold. Achoso that we just made reference to is simply an illustration of all other chayve krisis as well. There's no tfisas kiddushin. So that the parsha of rape is not stated with regard to women she'ein bohem havaya. Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya Omer Isha Ruya L'Kaima. He says that the parsha, that when it says V'lo Tiyeh L'Isha, it doesn't mean just the initial taking hold of the kiddushin, of the marriage, but it's a type of marriage that he shall continue with. For example, let's take the category of Chayvei Lavin. Chayvei Lavin is a woman that you are not supposed to marry, and if you do, you're punishable by lashing. However, in marrying her, she becomes an Eishes Ish. The marriage, the institution of marriage, the halachic status of being a married woman sets in. However, it's a type of marriage that we would not want to continue. We would want them to separate. We would want them to divorce. So Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya understands V'lo Tiyeh L'Isha means that the parsha of rape, including the payment that is required, applies only to the raping of a woman that's fit to continue being married to. Again, continue being married to. Shimon HaTimni, I know we're sounding a little repetitious, but for many of you, this is the first time these concepts are being spelled out. According to Shimon HaTimni, Isha Sheish B'Havaya is that type of woman that the marriage can take hold in the first place. As far as the difference between Shimon HaTimni and Shimon Asya, you might be able to guess already on your own what the difference is. However, that guess might be correct, but only up till the first stage of the Gemara. There are 4 stages as we go into the bracketed section at this point. On the side, under our Mivneh heading, you can see we have a crown shape. The crown highlights the expression Mai Binayu. Chipus nafkamina ben Shimon HaTimni v'Reb Shimon ben Menasya. What is the difference between these two Tanoim, L'or Shura Shaldeus Be'inyan Tfisas Kedushin? This question will repeat itself in light of other Tanaic opinions regarding the matter of under what conditions do the Kedushin take hold in the first place. So in a Gemara like this, there's a certain level of complication that in so far as we're already dealing with two schools of thought, two opinions, Rav Shimon Timni and Rav Shimon Asya. What might add a little bit to this confusion, they both have the same first name. So it would make things easier for us if we just emphasized Hatimni versus Ben Menasya. You could see the contrast. They state their points of view in the context, or they're speaking in the context of rape. Under what circumstances does the Torah's parsha of rape apply? And again, when we say that, we're not talking just about the obligation to marry her, but we're also talking about the payment that's made, the knas payment that's made. So as far as Shimon Timni is concerned, the knas payment will be made only in cases where the marriage to her would take hold. And of course, Shimon ben Menasya, the knas payment would be made only in those kind of marriages that there would be longevity to the marriage. In the brackets, we note, first crown marking, we read, my binai, what's the difference between these two opinions? Omar of Zera, mamzeres unesino ika binai. A person who would rape a mamzeres, an illegitimate girl, or a nesina, a girl coming from those people, the nesinim. Leman di Omar yesh bo havaya, honami yesh bo havaya. The one who says that the payment is made in cases where the marriage takes hold, so the marriage does take hold over here. So, and who says that, by the way? That's Shimon HaTimni. So if one were to rape a mamzeres or a nesina, he'll have to pay the knas, the 50 shekel kesef. Laman diomar ruya lekaimo. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya, when is the knas payment made? When you rape a woman, that when you marry her, the marriage would continue. We wouldn't want them to separate. Ha eino ruya lekaimo. If you're dealing with a mamzeres or a nesina, we do not want them to continue their marriage. Fine, we see a very clear point of difference. We now ask a question. According to Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva represents a very unique point of view, but he says that Kedushin does not take hold even in this lower level offense of Chayvei Lavin. Not only in Chayvei Krusus, a man tries to marry his sister, so there's no marriage that takes hold to begin with, but according to Rabbi Akiva, when you're dealing with a mamzeres, for example, which is an offense known as a lav, a negative command, a negative prohibition, which is punishable only by lashing, even that kind of marriage doesn't even take hold. So according to Rabbi Akiva, the issue of to say that the case of mamzeres would be a point of difference is not so. So taking the opinion of Rabbi Akiva and using him as a backdrop for the source in which we saw Shimon HaTimni and Shimon ben Menasya arguing, and then citing mamzeres and nesina as examples of difference, it wouldn't be a difference, because according to Rabbi Akiva, certainly it's not ruya l'kaima, but also it's ein bo havaya. It doesn't even take hold. So, according to Rabbi Akiva, my binai, what will a point of difference be between Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya? The Gemara answers, Iko binayu almona l'kohen gadol kerebi simoi. It would be the case of an almona, a widow, being raped by a kohen gadol, by a high priest. Sounds a little odd, of course, but the Torah, the Gemara deals with every possible situation. And to say that this will be a point of difference, you have to assume Rabbi Simoi's interpretation. Now, we'll see a Tanakh source in which Rabbi Simoy appears. He is a commentary of Rabbi Akiva. He qualifies Rabbi Akiva. So, up till now, we saw a very broad, sweeping presentation of Rabbi Akiva, that there's no Tfisas Kiddushin at all Chayvei Lavin. There are Chayvei Lavin that apply to everybody. There are Chayvei Lavin that are limited to certain kinds of people. But as far as Rabbi Akiva till now, all of them, there would be no Tfisas Kiddushin. And now we're embarking on an additional approach, and we're saying embarking, meaning that this is not the only, this installment number 2 is not the only one who's going to be dealing with Rabbi Akiva. We're going to be delving into different opinions as to what Rabbi Akiva's real opinion, real Shita is. In other words, we saw a general presentation of Rabbi Akiva, but there are more opinions as to what Rabbi Akiva says. So according to Rabbi Simoy, we're going to see within Rabbi Akiva a chance to point out a difference between Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya. Desanya, Rabbi Simoy Oimer, Min HaKol Oiser Rabbi Akiva Mamzerim. Now this expression, Min HaKol, is explained here by Rashi, Kol hanoilodim mechayvei lavin. From all those that are born from chayvei lavin, min hakol oiser Rabbi Akiva mamzerun, chutz me'almon al-kohen gadol. There is a principle that's hidden in these words that I'm not sure that Rashi himself even spells it out. But when you see the term mamzer, you're to assume that reflects on a union between two people that the kiddushin could not have taken hold. The mamzer is the child that results, we call that an illegitimate child, but it results from a marriage or a union between two people where there was no tfisas kiddushin. So a moment before we got to Reb Simoy, we pointed out that there's no tfisas kiddushin in all cases of chayvei lavin. Rabbi Simoy says, yeah, that's almost true. From almost all cases of chayvei lavin, there's no tfisas kiddushin, with one exception. Almona to a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Gadol is a person that's very restricted in whom he can marry. Amongst the people he's not allowed to marry is a widow. So there's a negative command involved here. However, it's limited to a Kohen Gadol. Shari Omra Torah, lo yikach v'lo yichalel. The Torah says, regarding the Kohen Gadol, he should not marry an almona, and by not marrying her, so he will not desecrate his seed. He won't create chalolim amongst his children. What does Rabbi Simoy see in this? He sees that the marriage between Almona and Kohen Gadol, chilulin hu oiseh v'ein oiseh mamzerin, that union, even though it's prohibited by a negative command, it says lo yikach, he shall not take an almona, even though it's, as we said, there's a negative command. The type of children that would be produced would be called chalolim. Chalolim is a disqualified individual from the kahuna. And we infer, we're medayik. When it says lo yichalel, it means that union would make chalolim, but it would not make mamzerim. Oh, so from the fact that you say it does not make mamzerim, that is a sign that there is tfisas kiddushin, that the kiddushin takes hold. Now, if the kiddushin takes hold, we go back to Shimon HaTimni and Rav Shimon Nasi above and ask, is this a point of difference? So if a Kohen Gadol would rape an almona, will there be knas? Does the kiddushin take hold? Yes, it does. How do we know that? Mamzeris does not result. The fact that Mamzeris does not result, it shows us that the kiddushin took hold. Is there knas? According to Shimon HaTimni, yes. Is this a marriage that we would want to continue? No. So according to Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya, it's not an isha l'kaima. So there is no knas according to Shimon ben Menasya. So here we have a difference between Shimon HaTimni and Shimon ben Menasya within the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. We continue delving further into the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. This is now number 3. We open with a question. Ula Rabbi Yeshevov, he is a commentary on Rabbi Akiva, Diomar, who said, Bo nitzaveach al Akiva ben Yosef, very picturesque expression. He says, let us come and scream against Rabbi Akiva, who's known as Akiva ben Yosef, who is guilty of Rabbi Akiva by formulating his opinion. He ends up creating lots and lots of mamzerim in amongst the Jewish people. That means if you expand the isur, or the non-tfisas kedushin, to so many different kinds of women, you're then creating the possibility of many mamzerim, people who violate those halachas. So Rabbi Shevov is upset that through Akiva ben Yosef there will be many mamzerim. Shoy Oimer, who used to say, Rabbi Akiva would say, Kol she'ein loy biya b'Yisrael avlad mamzer. Any union of man and woman that should not take place, literally ein lo biya, there is no any case where there is a prohibition of intimacy amongst the Jewish people. If it does take place and a child is born, avlad mamzer, the child born therefrom is a mamzer. We've written in the main point. Rabbi Shevov's attitude toward Rabbi Akiva is that Rabbi Akiva produces mamzeros from all kinds of prohibited intimacies, which will include an almana to a kohen gadol. So in other words, according to Rabbi Yeshevov, who analyzes Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Yeshevov, is there tfisas kedushin with almana and kohen gadol? No. Oh, there's not even tfisas kedushin. Not only is there not tfisas kedushin, certainly it's a type of union that we would not want to continue. It's eino ru'i l'kaima. So the Gemara asks, "My binayu, what will the point of difference between Shimon HaTimni? What will be the point of difference between Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya? My binayu, what's the difference? You can't say almana l'kohen gadol is a point of difference. Certainly, it's not ru'i l'kaima, but it's even not a marriage sheyesh bo havaya. Ika binayu, there is a point of difference." We continue at the top of Daf Lamed. Chayvei asei mitzri ve'edomi. There are prohibited unions that, if they take place, the Torah tells us that you're violating a positive command. You're not violating a negative command. There are very few examples of that, but Mitzri and Edomi are those kind of women that are prohibited to marry to the tune of a positive command. The Torah says that a person who converts from the Mitzri and Edomi people, you cannot, a person who's of pure Jewish lineage is not allowed to marry them until their third generation. The pasuk says, "Dor shlishi yavo lahem." Their third generation can enter the Jewish people, so that a Mitzri that converts, let's say a Mitzris woman that converts, her child is called a Mitzri Sheni. Her grandchild, her granddaughter in this case, would be a Mitzri Shlishi. That girl can marry into the rank and file Jewish people. Up till that point, they'll have to find the first generation Mitzri convert will have to find someone that halachically is permissible to them. Likewise, the Mitzri Sheni. Mitzri Shlishi is already a different story. Well, one who does marry a Mitzri Rishon, he's violating a positive command. He didn't wait the necessary time. He didn't wait till the third generation. And as such, he is, as we say, in violation of a mitzvahs aseh. What does that mean for us? So, up till this point then, in understanding, we'll say, Rebbe Yeshevov, the understanding was that Rabbi Akiva will create mamzerus from all kinds of chiyuvei lav, even almona l'kohen gadol. So chiyuvei lav, we can say, is ein bo tfisas kedushin, and is certainly ein roy l'kaima. But what about chiyuvei aseh? So the point of difference, according to this approach, will be that case. A man rapes a mitzris rishona. Is there tfisas kedushin? So we'll say yes, there is. Rabbi Akiva did not say regarding a mitzri rishona that there would be mamzerus. Is that a marriage that we would want to continue? No. So here we have a point of difference between Shimon HaTimni, who says that there is knas when it's yesh bo havaya. So there is havaya. According to Shimon Menasya, mitzris rishona, is it real kaima? No, it's not. Therefore, there'll be no knas. So there's a point of difference. We go on to stage 4. This approach, ha'nicha l'Rebbe Yeshevov, I lafuke mitayma de Rabbi Simoy ka'asi. Shapir means then things will work out. Rabbi Yeshevov was brought into our Gemara at stage 3. He was coming on the heels, let us say, of Rabbi Simoy. What did Rabbi Simoy say about these things? Rabbi Simoy was describing Rabbi Akiva as prohibiting all, or as saying there's no tfisas kedushin in all cases of chiyuvei lav, with the exception of almona l'kohen gadol. Rabbi Yeshevov came in with a very focused approach to that and said, what do you mean there's an exception within the realm of chiyuvei lavin? Within the realm of chiyuvei lavin, Rabbi Yeshevov says there's no exception. They're all cases of mamzerus. They are all cases of no tfisas kiddushin. So just to repeat that last point, according to Rabbi Yeshevov, all cases of chiyuvei lavin, as far as my understanding of Rabbi Akiva is concerned, will be no tfisas kiddushin. But if we listen carefully to the tone here, what is Rabbi Yeshevov saying then? It's true that in all cases of chiyuvei lavin there's no tfisas kiddushin, but with regard to the chiyuvei aseh, like Mitzri and Edomi, there is tfisas kiddushin, and since there's tfisas kiddushin, Shimon HaTimni would say there's a chiyuv knas. Shimon ben Asi would say no. So, approaching and describing Rabbi Yeshevov's opinion of Rabbi Akiva this way is only if you assume that Rabbi Yeshevov was coming as a response to Rabbi Simoy, whereas Rabbi Simoy was saying not all chiyuvei lavin create mamzerus. Rabbi Yeshevov, in response to that, says that all chiyuvei lavin do create mamzerus. However, there's another approach to this. Let's continue on the top line of Lamed Omer Aleph, the middle of the line, number 4. Number 4 on the top line, Honicha l'Rebbe Yeshevov ila fuke mitaimod Rabbi Simoy kosi shapir. As we read, that the saying that Mitzri and Edomi, representative of chiyuvei aseh, will be a point of difference. This is true if you view Rabbi Yeshevov as coming to, let's say, make a focused attack on Rabbi Simoy. La fuke, that means to exclude Rabbi Simoy. Whereas, I know we're going to repeat ourselves now, whereas Rabbi Simoy limited the chiyuvei lavin where there's no tfisas kiddushin, Rabbi Yeshevov expanded it to include almona l'kohen gadol as well. leaving room to say that chiyuvei aseh, which is something Rabbi Simoy didn't deal with at all, and hence Rabbi Yesheva didn't have to answer him on those grounds. With regard to chiyuvei aseh, there is tfisas kedushin. Elo, we continue in the Gemara on the third line from the top. Eloi taimo de nafshei omar. If Rabbi Yesheva was saying something strictly on his own, and he had said, Kol she'ein loy bi'o b'Yisrael havlad mamzer, very inclusive statement. All cases where there's a prohibition of intimacy with the Jews, the vlad will be a mamzer afilu chayvei aseh, even chayvei aseh. Well, then there's no tfisas kedushin with a Mitzri or Adomi, and it's certainly not roi l'kaimo. My binayu, what will the difference between Shimon Atimni or Shimon ben Manasseh? What will the point of difference be? According to both of them, using this approach, the approach of Rabbi Yesheva and his understanding of Rabbi Kiva, that wherever there's any level prohibition in intimacy, the vlad would be a mamzer, which means no tfisas kiddushin, and certainly not roi l'kaima. We don't see a point of difference between those two tanoim. The Gemara says, Ika binayu be'ula l'kohen gadol. We mentioned earlier that a kohen gadol is restricted, and I dare say highly restricted, in whom he's allowed to marry. We pointed out he's not allowed to marry even an almona. Certainly not a gerusha, that's already prohibited to a regular kohen. He cannot marry an almona, and in addition to that, he is expected to marry a basula, a virgin woman. A woman who has experienced intimacy already, a be'ula, she is also disqualified. Let us say then a kohen gadol, a high priest, who raped a be'ula. You might be asking, by the way, of course there's no knas in rape be'ula, because the din of knas is only if she's a virgin girl, if she's a basula. Can she be both a be'ula and a basula at the same time? Rashi answers that and says that the category, we're dealing with legal categories. A be'ula is a girl that experienced male intimacy, even if it wasn't in the normal, we'll say through the normal female birth canal, the normal female orifice. Intimacy, creating be'ula status, could take place even if it's through another orifice, on that part of the body, we'll say the back, we'll say a posterior entrance. That type, it's called bia. That happens to have it's called bia shelo kedarko. It's intimacy in the unusual way. That makes a woman a be'ula in halachic terms. However, as is probably obvious, her virginity is still there, because it wasn't broken through the male penetration through the normal female birth canal opening. So the basulim remains, even though she's still a be'ula. That having been said, what you should note that a kohen gadol is not allowed to marry her. What level prohibition is there if he does? So truth is, it's a violation of a positive command. The positive command says he has to marry a basula, not a be'ula. So it's a prohibition that's inferred from a positive command. A moment ago, we said that Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Yesheva, creates mamzerus even from chayvei aseh. So you might ask, well, isn't the case of be'ula l'kohen gadol also a chayvei aseh? And if it is, then how can this be a point of difference? We said that according to this approach, chayvei aseh are like chayvei lav there's mamzer is created, there's no tfisas kedushin. Why will this be a point of difference? The Gemara asks, "My shno, what's different about be'ula l'kohen gadol to the case of Mitzri or Adomi?" The Gemara answers there is a difference. To have a lay, the case of be'ula l'kohen gadol, asay she'enoi shava b'koil. It's an asay. There's a positive command, but it's not applicable to all. It's applicable only to a kohen gadol. That makes it, we'll call it a very low-level violation. It's a very, if we have to put things in, let's say, in perspective, it's a lav she'en shabakol will be a minor type violation. My intention here is not to minimize the severity of it, but to keep things in perspective. So we say it's a minor type violation. Hence, it would be that kind of violation where there would be tfisas kedushin, but it's not roy l'kaimo. So we would have found a point of difference regarding a kohen gadol who rapes a be'ula. According to Shimon HaTimni, there is havaya, so there will be knas. According to Shimon Menasya, she's not roy l'kaimo, therefore there will be no knas, and we've accomplished our mission. Omer Rav Chisda, Hakol Moedim Bebo Al Hanida. Everyone agrees that a person who rapes a menstruant woman, even though a person who is Bo Al Hanida, relations with a woman who has experienced her female monthly cycle, who hasn't purified herself, he is in violation of very severe offense. That's called kores. It's a very, very serious offense, and people who are not Torah observant ought to take note of this. This is it's people will understand that there are many people that will fast, for example, on Yom Kippur, knowing that it's a very serious matter. But one should realize that no less serious than fasting on Yom Kippur is having relations with a woman who hasn't properly purified herself. A woman who hasn't properly purified herself after her female cycle, which includes waiting a certain number of days to making sure she has no further blood sighting, plus immersion in a mikveh. If that is not accomplished, you're dealing with a problem that carries with it a penalty of kores. It's far worse, let's say, than there are many people that keep kosher, and they view that eating pig meat would be something they would never do, and yet when it comes to nida, they're not so careful about that. That's a case where their priorities are askew. So we should make sure that things are in proper proper perspective. This is a very serious offense. Now we're saying all of this by means of background to appreciate what Rav Chisda is saying. Rav Chisda is saying that everyone will agree, Shimon HaTimni, Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya, everyone will agree that one who rapes a nida, shemeshalem knas, that a knas payment is made. L'man damar yesh bo havaya, hanami yesh bo havaya. If a person offers marriage to a woman while she's experiencing her period of defilement known as nida, and she accepts the marriage, she is considered married. It takes hold. The marriage takes hold. That's called yesh bo havaya. And Laman de Omar, and who was that? That was that was Shimon HaTimni, who said, Isho sheyesh bo havaya, there's knas. In the case of a nida, there is havaya. Laman de Omar Riyah Kaimo, the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Masi says there's knas if it's a woman that is fit to continue being married to. So ha'nami ruya l'kaima. That's the case of every healthy woman as she's married to her husband. She continues being married even though in the interim she experiences the nida period, the menstrual period. She remains married. She's fit to continue being married to. And as you can see, the brackets closes over here. We gave a structural introduction before, so we know now, Ulafuke, our Mishnah, that says there's a chiyuv knas, even for cases of chiyuve kores, like bo ala chosel, one who rapes his sister, Not so in the eyes of Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. Desanya, Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana yoise es Yom Kippurim keshabes letashlumin. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana views the day of Yom Kippur. Now, the day of Yom Kippur is illustrative, is symbolic of chiyuvei kores. Just like we said before, that someone who eats or does malacha on Yom Kippur would be punishable by kores, so too all things that are kores. In Rabbi Nechunya ben Akona's eyes, when it comes to money payments associated with those violations, it's like money payments that you would associate with a Shabbos violation. Ma Shabbos mischayev benafsho poter min hatashlumin. Let's give a concrete example. A person, he torches his friend's pile of hay on Shabbos. The hay for his friend is value. He uses the hay as horse feed. It's worth money. I come along and torch it on Shabbos. It goes up in flames. I'm causing my friend a loss, right? But at the very same time, I'm also violating Shabbos. Shabbos is a day when you're not allowed to burn items. I just went ahead and violated Shabbos. Shabbos is a very serious offense. The violation of Shabbos is a very serious offense, carrying with it court execution. It's punishable by court execution. It's a capital offense. The halachic principle states that when you are simultaneously violating a capital offense and causing damage, which would mean incurring financial liability, the need to pay for that falls away, is exempted. There's a principle that says kom lei b'derabba minei. It's sufficient that the person gets punished with the more serious punishment, which thereby will say includes, or you could say exempts from, the lesser form of penalty of paying money. So just like Shabbos, we say mischayev benafshu poter min hatashlumin, one who becomes chayev benafshu, who has to pay with his life for the Shabbos violation, he thereby is exempt from any money obligations that is incurred thereby. Af Yom Kippurim, so to Yom Kippurim, which represents chiyuvei kores, mischayev benafsho poter min hatashlumin. Kores, we rarely translate in our Gemara markings shiurim. There's a bit of a discussion what exactly is kores, but we can say to a certain degree kores would mean dying early. Also includes cases of someone whose children die on him. But you can see that in kores there's this element of death. It's not court administered, but there's an element of death, premature death, that kores illustrates. Therefore, Yom Kippur too is like Shabbos in so far as there is this element of mischayev benafsho, and therefore poter min hatashlumin. What is the source for Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana? That, of course, will be the continuation of the Gemara, which we'll Mirz Hashem have to take care of in our next shiur. But just to repeat the main last point, our Mishnah says that chiyuvei kores, rapes, do engender a knas payment. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana says no, they do not. Chiyuvei kores, rapes, do not generate a knas payment. So our Mishnah is la'afuke with Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, in addition to have been la'afuke Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya.